Hi, everyone. It's Diana Gomez, Advocacy Director at Progress Texas, and your host today covering for Satvik. Welcome to the Progress Texas Happy Hour. I'm joined by the Progress Texas Communications Director, Wesley Story.
Hey, y'all.
President Ed Espinoza.
Hi.
And a very special guest today on our show, Marva Sadler, the Senior Director of Clinical Services at Whole Women's Health. Welcome to the show, Marva. We're so excited to have you.
Thank you. And hello, everybody.
Would you mind telling folks just a little bit about yourself before we start?
Sure. So I work with Whole Women's Health, as you said. I've been with Whole Women's Health. I think I've tallied up about 15 years now. I'm here with Whole Women's Health. I base here in Texas. Most of my career, my reproductive justice career, has been right here in the state of Texas. I'm working with women in the state of Texas over those years. Unfortunate situation that we're in, but I absolutely love what we do. I love helping women, and I love saving lives and can hope to continue to do so.
That is amazing. Thank you so much for taking time out of your super busy schedule, out of the super important work that you're doing to continue it in a different way with us. And a part of that important work that we're doing is talking about what everyone is drinking today, since this is a happy hour. I will start. I've been told by Ed I'm not allowed to drink Trulies anymore, so I've upped that ABV.
I didn't say you weren't allowed to drink Truly. I just said no more Truly jokes.
I took that as a hint that I needed to. I take criticism seriously in the workplace. So I got a wine. How about you, Wesley? What are you drinking?
So I am drinking dairy-free eggnog with a little bit of rum in it, which Jorge actually bought from HEB a few days ago, because I refuse to let my holiday season be ruined by the Supreme Court. So.
Yes. So seasonal. What about you, Ed?
I am drinking Zilker Brewing Company, a good local beer here in Austin, their Parks and Rec Ale. Because, this week has just been so full of parks and recreation. You hear that little ASMR? If you open up the can, I'm pouring it. So can you hear me pouring it? But, yeah, that's what I got.
Sounds great.
And last but not least, Marva, are you drinking anything today?
I am a super slacker today, but I do have an amazing ginger ale. That is absolutely amazing. But it is Friday, so as soon as we're done today, I will join you soon.
All right. Well, like I said, we have an amazing guest today, Marva, and here today we're talking about really big news this week that happened. It was the December 1st was the day that the Supreme Court began hearing oral arguments on a very important, very monumental case that could have repercussions on Roe versus Wade. And we know something really important to note is that a decision won't come out until next summer. But Wesley, would you mind giving us a little bit of background on the case and why it's so important?
Yeah, so the case is Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization. I think it's important to talk about, kind of distinguish between Texas and Mississippi right now, because I think that there are two cases in front of the Supreme Court and folks may be a little bit confused. So there is currently a Texas case that the court heard a few weeks ago. It's supposed to be an expedited case, and it's on SB 8, the 6-week abortion ban. And it's really just on procedural issues, how the ban is being enforced, who's enforcing it, who can challenge it. It's not necessarily a question of constitutionality. The court isn't deciding whether SB 8 is constitutional. This is still an important case, though, because it could have implications about whether the strategy that Texas is using by allowing abortion vigilantes and bounty hunters, whether that's allowed to move forward. But then there's the Mississippi case, and that's the case that was heard this week on December 1st. And this case is huge. Like Diana said, it's monumental. It's about constitutionality. It is a challenge to a Mississippi statute that bans abortion at 15 weeks. 15 weeks is pre-viability. So Mississippi is asking the Supreme Court either to overrule Roe and Casey in their entirety. Roe and Casey are two landmark Supreme Court cases that granted abortion rights. And specifically, there are portions of the decisions that prohibit states from taking away the decision to have an abortion before viability. And so the Mississippi is asking the court to either overrule the cases entirely or take away that portion of the cases that prohibits states from taking away abortion access before viability. It's not clear how long before viability. That hasn't actually been proposed yet. It's just basically if the court rules in Mississippi's favor in this case, then abortion bans pre-viability would be allowed.
Thank you so much, Wesley, for that context, for that really important background. My favorite part, which I think was absolutely everyone's favorite part during the hearing, during a hearing that it's really hard to find favorite parts in, since it's just full of ridiculousness and we wish just wasn't happening in the first place. But the fire of the fight that our queen from the Bronx brought in, I'm talking about Justice Sotomayor, just so amazing, and was saying a lot of the stuff that I'd want to say that we were thinking, but she's just so smart and knows way more than most of us do about this.
Very, very eloquent. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I wish I could think like that and say that. She had some really great lines, and I just wanted to ask y'all if y'all had any sort of favorite zingers, any favorite punches that she gave. What about you, Ed? Any favorite moments from Sotomayor?
I mean, speaking of eloquence, I think the line that stood out to me was the one where she said, "Will the court survive the stench that this creates in the public perception that the Constitution and its reading are just political acts?" And to hear it stated so blatantly is exactly what all of us were thinking. And to have like a Supreme Court justice say it from the bench was something that I felt was very relieving. Like I felt like we all were thinking that, and you don't get to hear that kind of candor too often, and she brought it.
Absolutely.
Yes, it was such a great read. Marva, did you have any moments or lines of Sotomayor's that you liked?
You know, actually, I really want to piggyback what off Ed said, and there were so many moments. They were all outrageous and amazing, but in the clinic level this morning, we were able to share some of those out with our staff. And exactly what Ed said, it made us feel like we still had a dog in the fight. It made us feel like there was absolutely someone there who had our back. And a couple of times we said, I think she said exactly what we're saying, but she just made it sound so much better. Let's take that back and retrack it again. They were all amazing points, but it was definitely the shine and the light of hope for those of us who were watching from afar, who sometimes feel like we're a little outnumbered and don't have a dog in the fight. We definitely not only felt like we had someone in the fight, we had the right person in the fight for us, and it made us feel really good.
Definitely. And I think there were a lot of Supreme Court legal analysts that morning that were letting folks know sort of what you were saying, Marva, that a lot of what she said wasn't exactly to question the opposition, the anti-abortion vigilante folks. It was more so to speak to Americans, and it was really directly at us. And so that was really great to hear. Wesley, were there any favorite lines of yours?
Just to echo what you said, I think that's a really important point, Diana, is that Sotomayor was speaking to the people listening because she knows where this case is headed. Yes. I think a lot of us know where this case is headed. So the question is more about what do we do from there, but then also a question of the Supreme Court and whether we should respect them anymore. You know, if they're making a decision based off of politics, are they really valid? Do they have that same air of consistency that they've had in the past? And the answer is no. I mean, at the end of the day, if they overturn Roe, if they overturn Casey, that's a political decision that they're making. And I think Sotomayor really wanted to highlight that for the people. Absolutely. But then also to capitalize on those fears that the other justices have, because they know that that's something that the public's thinking. So just putting that in their mind during the oral arguments, I think it was honestly genius. Absolutely. But there were a few other moments that I really, really liked. And some of these are just really short liners. I took notes of them because I listened to the oral arguments. But I mean, there was one point when another justice hopped in to ask questions, and once he was finally done, she comes in and she says, "May I finish my inquiry?" So she was not letting her space.
Right.
Yeah, she wasn't letting her space be taken up.
Awesome.
She was
Yeah.
asking the questions that she needed to be asking.
Yep.
I remember at one point she responded to one of the lawyers on the other side, and she's like, "I'm not sure how your answer makes any sense," and then like continued on with her question. But she was really just holding them accountable for the BS that was spewing from their mouths. So
I forgot about both of those things, but I remember hearing them. She's like, "Can I finish my inquiry?" I was like, "Oh my God, this is so good."
Yes, and when I feel like when she was talking about the next bench that would follow the Supreme Court, I feel like she was saying, "Y'all are gonna smell. I smell excellent. I'm letting you know how great the smell is for me. The rest of you is what's gonna stink." And that's because, like you were saying, Wesley, she's letting everybody know how the outcome of this, making a decision to overrule a past Supreme Court ruling, is so monumental. It has only happened, I think, only a couple of times in our history. It's not a frequent thing. It's pretty rare. And so to do that, and to do it only because of political reasons, could really put into question, and she questioned this, are other things going to be, turned back? What about marriage equality?
That's
What
right.
about interracial marriage? What
That's
about the ability to access birth control? Like this really is a critique on the legitimacy of the Supreme Court. And I love that she pretty much put them on blast.
Yes, she did.
Yeah. And it was
there was something else she said too. We talk about her eloquence and how good she was about speaking to the people, but at the same time, she also had some lines that were very matter-of-factly delivered. And there's one in particular, by the way, if anybody's interested in these quotes, we have our favorite ones up on Progress Texas Instagram. Plug for the old Instagram. But the matter-of-fact quote that I'm thinking about is where she said, "So when does the life of a woman and putting her at risk enter the calculus?" Just, when does the mom come into play here? And I'm not sure that anybody ever actually had an answer for it.
No.
During oral arguments.
No, and then also her questioning, like, is there any logic behind this? But by logic, she meant like science. Is there any science to prove this? Because there are very few, it's a small minority of scientists when we're talking about when does life, or the conception of life, like when does that actually begin? And she was talking about how it's more of a religious issue.
Yes.
That this is pretty religiously motivated. And
actually,
there are
and the science thing was when the attorney for Dobbs, was it Dobbs that I'm thinking about, the guy who's defending Mississippi's law?
Yes.
When the attorney for Dobbs says, "Well, doctors believe that there is fetal pain," and she was like, no, a very thin minority of doctors who are considered fringe. Like, to just call him out like that, I thought was just so on point. Like, don't give him an inch. Don't let him get away with that BS.
Yeah, it's the same fringe doctors that probably believe Kennedy is going to come back from outer space. Conspiracy,
What's more crazy, that Kennedy might come back, or that he might come back and be a Republican?
Ooh.
They're both pretty far-fetched.
So besides toasting to Sotomayor and her fire lines that were given on Wednesday, want to talk about the fact that this is something that's gotten so much press, so much coverage. And even though it is a very controversial case, something that is so dangerous, but what's been inspiring is that a lot of folks have been moved by what's happening when it comes around abortion access. Some folks that have always been in the fight, but then there are a lot of other folks that have been mobilized by this issue. Are there any groups or people that y'all can think of that have started to get fired up because of this fight for abortion access? How about you, Ed?
So I do know some people who aren't political and have been very incensed by this. And, we talked about this right before the show, but a friend of mine who used to be a reporter, he was very political, but his wife was not, and she was, you know, a bit religious and a bit more on the conservative side, though I wouldn't go so far to say maybe Republican or anything like that. But she saw this and was just really wanted to do something about it. She wanted to fight back. She wanted to have a voice in it. And this is a person who's not political and suddenly feels a need to do something. So that's just one story, in addition to like all of the activists that you and Wesley saw at the Capitol. Marva, I'm sure you've seen so much happen in the proximity to women's whole women's health as well.
Absolutely. Most importantly, the place that we've seen it really shine and bubble up is with the patients themselves. In the past, normally we usually have a hard time having a patient or getting a patient to agree to speak about their experience outly, because of course that's then telling the world that you've even seeked out the services or called our clinic in the first place, which comes with its own set of problems and rules. But especially on September the 1st, it seemed like that very first day when women were coming into the clinic and actually realizing that this is real, this is actually in play, in place, and affecting me directly, we definitely saw patients willing to not only speak up and to speak out, but even asking, what can I do to make this go away? So it was a little bit of a turn for us, and we had to make a lot of quick changes in our operations to figure out how to support those decisions from our patients. But we've definitely seen them become more active, wanting more to speak up, and definitely want to make a difference.
And that's so great, especially putting people who are affected by these laws in the forefront. Wesley,
Absolutely.
what about you? What have you seen?
You know, I think it's interesting because I think for a lot of us, like if you work in this space, you're not necessarily surprised by what we're seeing. The states and the Supreme Court have been really slowly chipping away at abortion rights and access for decades, ever since Roe was decided. And I think a lot of people had it in the back of their minds, you know, Roe is settled law. They're never going to go after Roe. Abortion's never going to be illegal in the country. Whereas, you know, we've been warning folks for a while that that might change, but now it's actually in front of the Supreme Court, and a lot of people are shocked. I'm glad that folks are finally paying attention. I wish maybe it would have happened before, but I'm glad it's finally happening. And something specific that I've been seeing, especially on social media, is just people posting their stories. Their stories about abortion, their stories going to clinics for other health issues, you know, and how this law or how this case and the decision in this case would have impacted what they were able to do, would have taken away that opportunity that they had. And so I think that really makes it real for everyone else who's watching.
That's a super great point, Wesley. Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, there are so many abortion storytellers that are even now, like you said, Wesley, coming out with their stories. And the fact that we're seeing it even on a national stage, I think there was a comedian with Saturday Night Live who told her abortion story while dressed up like a clown, right? She's like, how do I make this funny? And told
was
the whole
it Cecily Strong?
Yes.
Cecily Strong. Yeah, it was brilliant. It was brilliant.
It was totally brilliant. And it just brought out more folks around the country to tell their family about it, because like that, you know, really important line goes, everybody knows somebody, everybody loves somebody that's had an abortion.
That's right.
And that statistic was brought up during the Supreme Court as well, that 1 in 4 people in the U.S. will have an abortion. People who are able to, you know, to have a pregnancy will have an abortion. So it's much more common than we think. And the fact that it's so common means that we all have a friend, a family member, a coworker, somebody we know and interact with that has gone through this.
The line that we see a lot at the Capitol and just at rallies is that everyone loves someone who had an abortion. Yeah,
definitely. And, you know, Marva, wanted to ask you specifically about these people that we know, that we love, that have undergone this, you know, regular form of healthcare that should be accessible to all. And you've seen it on the front lines here in Texas through Whole Women's Health. Can you give us a bit of a picture? Because I think, you know, September 1st happened and many, many days have gone in between. Can you let us know, what does abortion care look like right now in Texas? What is it? What are some of the obstacles? What's been going on in the last 90 days here in Texas?
I mean, it's definitely been a roller coaster ride over the last 90 plus days, especially, of course, September 1st, just trying to get into the habits of the new way, a lot of no's, a lot of turning patients away. That definitely is still continuing. Our numbers of the patients we're able to serve have decreased by more than 50% in many of our markets. And again, it's not that they're not women who are seeking those services. Those are women who don't qualify for the services and are seeking those services. So, patients are traveling outside of the states, our neighboring states. We've heard from the abortion clinic in our neighboring states that they're currently scheduled throughout the end of the year, even if they're able to schedule any more patients at this point. And so now patients are having to reach even further out than those neighboring states to get care, which is absolutely delaying that care and making it such a horrific and traumatic process for many of these women and our patients. Not only that, we're also seeing the patients of our neighboring states who actually live there having increased a delay of time to access care because of the influx of Texas patients who are coming in, and the care just not being able to keep up with the demand with the new place with the new amount of people who are coming in. So it's been a definite whirlwind. Today, right before jumping on this call, we're actually working through our new September rule of SB4, which just took effect yesterday, which has also now submitted its own other set of issues of regulation and compliance that are not patient friendly, that are definitely limiting the patients' access to the care that they need and deserve, while also causing a delay in the care of the patient that the patients need as well. So it's been it's been a lot. It's been a lot to get through. I can't minimalize it at all. We've lost staff. We've done everything we possibly can to continue to keep the staff that are still here encouraged, supported. It's really hard to go from being available in a business where your sole purpose is to provide a service that comes with its own set of stigma for a patient, to now being turned into a referral source to tell those patients that you can't help them. So it's definitely been a lot, but we're doing our best to stay diligent. We're doing our best to encourage each other, and more importantly, doing everything we can to support the patients who need to get out of the state and to support them in hopefully getting services as soon as possible here in the state when we can.
Definitely. And we really love having folks like you that are doing this really important work, and also letting folks know that we still have clinics here in Texas. They're still open, and with seeing what's happening in Texas, what do you think, or what could you predict might happen if SCOTUS rules to overrule Roe next summer? What could this mean for the rest of the country?
I think it definitely can mean what happened in Texas won't stay in Texas for sure. And Wesley said something so powerful earlier. I'm really excited about the attention that SB 8 and the cases in the Supreme Court have garnered. But oh my gosh, I wish we'd had this some time ago, because this is unfortunately not new for us. This has been kind of a buildup of it to come. And it's just kind of worse and worse and worse until now we're at the point of what I feel like is risking it all and it all being on the line. But Texas is definitely a pre-show of what the rest of the world and the country could look like for sure if we lose the little bit of road that we have left.
And I think, Diana, just to add to that, I think it's really important to point out who bears the burden of these restrictions too. So we know that it's Black and Latinx people, Absolutely. Indigenous communities, people of color, people with disabilities, people in rural areas, and people who can't travel or afford to travel, young people. These are all of the people who are going to feel the direct result of these restrictions. It's already happening here in Texas, but if the court does overturn these cases, these decisions, then it'll be felt around the country. And, because Texans are traveling out of state to access abortion elsewhere, those states, their capacity is also being strained. And so we know that if Roe is overturned, about half of the country, around 26 states, are potentially prepared to make abortion either illegal or institute bans that are very early in the process. And so that would be half the states in the country that would potentially be banning abortion.
And that's a really important point that Wesley brings up, because that brings the political side of this into the legal argument. And that when we look at a presidential election map, and there are red states and there are blue states and there are swing states, your access to abortion in this country is going to look a lot like a presidential election map. Your red states will have no access to abortion. Your blue states will. And then I don't know what's going to happen in swing states. Are they going to change the law every 2 to 4 years? Well, I guess that's one of the things we'll have to wait and see. But think about how that patchwork of laws around the states, in that some states you have rights and in other states you don't have rights. And it is entirely based on politics. It goes back to what we said at the beginning of the podcast, where Sonia Sotomayor says, you know, are we going to rule on the rule of law, or are we going to rule with politics? Is that going to have this stench over the court? Another thing that I think is important with the political angle here is the I think I lost my train of thought.
Well, I have something to add to what you were saying, Ed.
Yeah, go ahead. I remember what I was going to say, but go ahead.
Okay, well, I was just going to say, you know, you're talking about the maps and how like half of them red, half of them blue, half of them have a certain right, half of them don't. But also 80% of the country supports legal abortion. 75% of Americans believe that decisions on abortion should be left to a woman and her doctor, or a person seeking abortion and their doctor.
And a majority here in Texas, too, by double digits, supports abortion rights.
Exactly. Absolutely. And so the map, how it's going to end up if they overturn this ruling, is not actually representative of the American people and what they want.
Not at all. Not at all.
Once again, let's just say it's yet another thing that's not representative of the American people. The last point I was going to make, and I realize I'm talking a lot here, is that what I would hope people could realize is that the four of us here work in this space, we follow this very closely, but what listeners may not know is that the attempt to undermine Roe is not sudden. It's not something that just happened. This is the result of 30 years of an effort to rebuild the courts. Donald Trump was in office for 4 years, and he had 3 appointments to the Supreme Court, one of which was one that Mitch McConnell stole, was a holdover from Obama, left that seat vacant for a year. The third of which you could say he also stole, because when it gets precedent to put someone in office right before an election, right before a presidential election. So they knew what they were doing, and this is exactly what they wanted. And it's going to take a long time to undo it.
Agreed.
Definitely. And it's important to know that no matter what the court decides next summer, and it's so painful and makes me even more anxious than I already am, that we'll have to wait until next summer to see what happens. But no matter what they decide, we as Texans, as a whole nation, we're not going to stop fighting for abortion access and for abortion liberation. And, you know, something I'm hopeful for is that next year is also an election year. And if this is something that drives folks, you know, who have never voted before, who didn't realize, right, like that they could elect local judges who then become, you know, move on to the Supreme Court one day or something, to really rise up and act. And then on a local level to provide support for their friends and family who are seeking an abortion, and help them find resources to get that, right? Because it's not just about your elected officials being the ones to help you, because sometimes they don't, but also being that support for you, your community, and for your friends at that level. You know, last question that I wanted to ask, and I want to start with you, Marva. I know, you know, we're happy hour drinking, and it's fun and it helps. It doesn't always give me the grounding I need, though. It kind of makes me a little wobbly. But what is keeping you grounded and giving you joy and giving you hope during this time?
First, let me say thank you all for this platform. Just as concerned as I am about there not being the attention prior to this fight and what's happening now, I'm super excited to see that it continues and we continue the conversation. So thank you all so much for having this platform and for keeping the buzz going and keeping everyone informed. I think it is the patients for sure who keep me grounded. I made a commitment to them some time ago. When I started this work, and on my first day of work, I was approached by a protester who told me I was going to hell and how my life would be ruined. I was bit by the bug, is what I call it, from that day. I mean, I made a commitment to the women of Texas, those who came before me and those who will come after me, that as long as there was someone fighting against them, that I would stand in the shoes to continue to fight for them. What gives me hope, do my best not to cry. are the people on the ground who are continuing to go to work every single day. Our protesters have increased. They are mean, they are ugly. And on top of that, they're going into the clinic every day and enforcing a rule that none of them agree with. They are my heroes, those staff members, those providers who are giving everything that they have to make sure the few people we can see get the very best care that they possibly can, are definitely the lights and the reason I'm up every morning.
That's amazing. How about
Nice.
you, Ed? What's giving you hope and keeping you moving?
Well, what keeps me moving is I hike a lot. We have a lot of trails in Austin that kind of helps me give me some balance, keeps my mind off things. I've hiked about 400 miles this year. And what really gives me hope, I think, is very similar to what Marva said. It's the activists, and it's the people who really care about this and believe in fairness and justice, but maybe don't have a voice or feel that they don't have the means to express their voice. And I think that a media organization like Progress Texas exists not only to be able to give them voice, but to work with the media day to day to help shape the stories, to say, hey, this is not a one-sided story. There's two sides to this, which, Diana and Wesley, you guys work with this every day. Marva, you see it at the clinics every day. And it's important that those stories are told.
Yes.
That I see it very much not as a motivating factor, but as a responsibility to stand up for those who are relying on us to stand up for them.
Awesome. How about you, Wesley?
I'm super glad you asked this question because I think it's important. It's really easy, especially in Texas, but now with everything going on with the Supreme Court, it's easy to be pessimistic. Something that I have to keep telling myself is just because something is legal doesn't make it right. Just because something is illegal doesn't make it wrong. Laws are not morals. And so if you look at the history of our country and the justice system and the way it's changed over time, look at our founding, we see that the pendulum swings back and forth.
Yeah.
And so I have to know that eventually, hopefully in our lifetimes, maybe not, but eventually the pendulum is going to swing back. But that's not going to happen without the people who are fighting for these rights.
Right.
And so the folks who have already been mentioned, all of the activists, organizers, the providers, the funds, all of them who are on the ground every day doing this work and remaining hopeful, they're the ones who are giving me hope and keeping me grounded. Also, the new people who are joining the fight, I've seen people posting about like leading a march or leading a rally or voting or building community. I think that over the next few years, it's going to be so important how we build our community and build a movement, how we help those in need. People need to volunteer to drive friends out of state. People need to volunteer to house folks who may be getting an abortion out of state. And I've seen people doing that already, saying that if this law is overturned, this is what my commitment is going to be to the cause.
Yeah.
And I think all of that is so important. And I think that at the end of the day, the only way we're going to get through this is as a community, because that's how we've always had to get through these types of problems and laws.
Wesley, you mentioned some of the funds, and I actually want to give a shout out. I pulled up a webpage that I think Wesley an article that I think Wesley wrote called Progressive Organizations Working to Make Texas a Better Place in 2021. It's a Progress Texas article. The funds that are listed here are the Frontera Fund, Fund Texas Choice, Jane's Due Process, the Lilith Fund, Texas Equals Access Fund, the West Fund. And then, of course, there's so many other groups like Whole Woman's Health, thank you, Marva, and Planned Parenthood Texas Votes, Avow Texas, formerly NARAL, Pro-Choice Texas, now Avow Texas. There's so many more that I could mention here. Obviously, our friends at Texas Freedom Network. There's so many groups doing this work in Texas. I count Progress Texas as one of them, of course. And I think that it's good to see this community and to see that it's a big state. We need all the help we can get. And we have a lot of it. We could use some more. So if anybody's out there and you're looking to get involved and you want some kind of an opportunity, there are groups out there that could use your help.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Absolutely.
definitely. Last group I'll throw out there is the AFIA Center out of Dallas.
Oh, yeah, AFIA Center.
Yes, and I'm going to throw in
like the first one on the list. How did I miss that?
Yes, Marva, were you going to throw in something else?
Stigma Relief Fund as well. I'll throw that one in too. We're new, but we're there.
Great.
Yes, amazing. And I'll add that something that gives me hope and happiness is the ability to laugh through the darkness of it all with all of y'all, and especially to laugh and to say, I'll drink to that when someone tells you that you're going to go to hell, and say, you'll be there before I do, and I'll see you there. So
cheers.
cheers. Marva, Wesley, and Ed, thanks for lending your expertise. To everyone who's watching and listening, thank you for joining us. Head over to www.progresstexas.org to follow us on all the social media channels and subscribe to our email list. If you're listening to us, please subscribe to us on your favorite podcast app and leave us a review. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, y'all.
Thanks. Bye.